We might do ourselves a good disservice if we talk only about the more obvious or positive things about weight loss, but not address some of the more mundane truths that need to be addressed. My dropping weight was a process like yours will be if you have a lot to lose. So this video is going to focus more on some mental changes that are bigger in most ways than the physical ones. But these are the ones that we're not prepared for. And my goal here is to prepare you for what awaits once you get to your goal weight and beyond. Those feelings of being on top of the world, of going around and showing off your new body, those are wonderful feelings. And you'll ride that high for longer than a year. You'll enjoy discovering or rediscovering your physical abilities. I remember how exciting it was to know that I could run upstairs, whereas as a big guy I couldn't even handle 2 flights without being severely winded. You'll feel great for a long time, and then life's going to take on kind of a more different tinge. For instance, the big crux of what you have to prepare for after you get done with the initial high of coming to terms with the new you is the fact that you are going to become more conscientious, self-conscious even. Fasting does this by tapping you into caring basically about what people think of you. You're going to be much more mindful of what you put in your body, so much so that you're going to have to prepare for the fact that you can self-absorb too easily. You can do all sorts of things that will eliminate you from normalcy. You'll become very fiercely devoted to yourself. But that can be a bad thing. So this is all conscientiousness. And of course, my goal in this is to remind you that fasting doesn't solve every problem. First of all, let's look at number 1. Fasting makes you more self-conscious of your age and your mortality. This simply says health conditions that you might get, they come and go, and it can happen to anybody. There is no predicting it. Fasting will not cure every ailment. It will not cure every health condition. It will not cease to remind you that you are mortal. In fact, it's going to heighten your sense of self. Ever since I started fasting, I became aware of how my body processes sugars and proteins to the extent that when I eat something, if I couldn't taste my food at all, I can sit around and feel how it goes down, and about 45 minutes to an hour after I eat, if I knew nothing else about what I'm eating, I would be able to determine what kind of food I ate by the insulin response I get. Other than that, I know my energy levels. I know that when I get more sugar, I feel better. You know your body in ways like that, and it reminds you of your own mortality. In a way, this self-consciousness makes you more alert to the fact that you're someday going to die. And of course, it doesn't remove all health conditions. You might have allergies, you might have arthritis, you might have other health conditions that are not eliminated by fasting. I've shared in my story that I was always sick as a big guy. I was always going to the doctor getting treatments for lung infections. I would get walking pneumonia, and I'd have it for a long time. I would get bronchitis, which of course would transition into pneumonia. I used to get asthma treatments. I would get colds, and it would just run its course. It would destroy me. You're not going to eliminate all health conditions. You're just not. And you're going to be more conscious of how you feel. You'll walk around, and your brain will be more emotionally aware. You can be in a room with someone, and you can kind of pick up what they're feeling, and you become kind of empathic because of course, some of this depends on how prone you are to mentally reading people, but it will enhance, but it will also serve as a depressing reminder of your own mortality, because none of us are getting younger. But once you become aware of what your body does, it can be a scary thing. Number two, you become more conscientious of your changes from the journey. This means changes that are physical and mental. Mainly, the ones here I'm thinking of are physical. Loose skin. When I look in the mirror, I'm aware of the way my waist looks. It doesn't look like someone who has never been overweight, and it doesn't have to. But in a perfect world, I'd love to look like some of these young 22-year-olds who are running to the beach with their shirts off. The fact that I'm colder physically. I hate the winters now. I used to, as a big guy, I used to love the winters because I was always hot-natured. Now I'm always cold. A breeze comes in at 60 degrees, 50 degrees. I'm done. I want it to be warm again. I set my thermostat usually to around 80 degrees in my house because I am pretty cold generally. Xiphoid process. Anybody, and this is not, by the way, these aren't confined to OMAD, 1 meal a day. These can be experienced on any other weight loss, but the xiphoid process, that's the little, if you feel your sternum right below that little knot, you kind of have to feel around for it if you've never lost weight. But once you lose weight, that becomes a knot. It feels like a knot at the end of there. And it doesn't hurt and nothing happens with it, but you'll feel it. You'll notice it. That's one annoying physical characteristic that the internet is full of reporting because you can find it. You can find all that in all of the similar stories in no matter how someone lost weight. And if you just put in xiphoid process lump or an equivalent of that, you'll see tons of stories about that. And I don't really know why that is. I can't find an answer, but it is not really an issue as far as I can tell. I've never had trouble. It's just something I've noticed. And then old shoes and old clothing. This may surprise you to know that you lose weight in your feet when you go fasting. I've actually gone from a size 14.5 to 12.5 since I was a big guy. Never saw that coming. And then your old clothes. I made a chunk of money getting rid of my old 5X and 4X shirts and big pants, 54-inch waist pants. It's what I used to wear. I used to wear 52 to 54 inch waist, and now it's a 34, 33, 34. Really, 34 is getting kind of loose. Well, that sounds like a positive thing, right? But you find yourself thinking about all of those changes on a regular basis, and it can consume a lot of your thoughts. So you have to move on once you've lost the weight and plow your mind right past those things because life goes on. So more on that in a minute. Number three, you become more conscientious of how behind you are from others that are still ahead of you physically. What does this mean? This means once you lose the weight and you figure out that people can run upstairs, you realize you can now run upstairs, but you're still behind the pack in terms of fit people. So when I first lost my weight, I got down to about 205 pounds, and I realized I could move again. And I loved it, but when I tried to run, I realized I had to condition myself to be able to do anything more than a walk run because I couldn't keep up. My lungs weren't conditioned for it, and I had been fasting. I didn't have the reserves to keep going. I didn't have all the sugar. I used to burn sugar, and I would be able to go pretty long, but I couldn't do that. So you realize once you get back to the normal level, how far behind you were to not be able to run upstairs, to not be able to jog around the block, to not be able to stay up and play with the kids or go on outings because you felt too bad, because you had to go to sleep after you got home, after you ate, because your body was fighting to keep your sugars in control and you could do nothing but sleep like a bear. Well, that's going back to the first point. You become more aware of your mortality. You become more aware of your progress in terms of the fact that you were way behind the curve for a long time. And now you're just at the average. Now you're back to where you should be, but you're not necessarily ahead. So I got myself in shape, got myself able to pass a police physical, and I felt a lot better. And every day, of course, you learn that there's always somewhere ahead of you. There's always someone ahead of you. So if I want to do a 5K run or 10K or something crazy, I'm going to have to do a little more training than I do. And I'm going to have to negotiate that with the injuries I have, with the arthritis that I have, for instance. And it's going to be a little bit more of a challenge. But it's that mindfulness forward that gives you the means to head to self-improve. And this is what takes your life on an upward curve. Whereas your fasting restored your mental awareness, it's up to you to move ahead, to get back to the normal platform and say, here's where I am, here's where my progress level puts me. I'm now like a fit person. It's up to you if you want to move ahead of that, or if you say, hey, that's good enough for me. But you're going to find that it's very hard when you're doing things like fasting and you adjust your mind to it. It's going to be hard to sit still. You're going to need to plod yourself along because your brain is kind of going to drive you in that direction. And you have to make peace with how fast you can go. Number 4, you become more conscientious of how you have the same social/interpersonal issues as before. Go back to what I said in the opening about fasting not solving every problem. This is totally the case. If you have problems maintaining relationships, dating, if you have problems with your work ethic, if you have a problem holding down a job, if you have a lack of social skills that is an impediment to you, guess what? Those problems are still going to be there post-weight loss. Especially your relationship, your interpersonal relationships. This is never truer than with all the relationships you have. Your ability to network and to maintain a relationship with someone is a totally separate skill than your looks. It's a totally separate skill than your physical health. It comes down to your ability to add value to someone else. And if you don't socially add value, that problem is going to be there just the same when you lose weight. And I get so many people that contact me, some of them men, and they say, well, I'm not very good looking and I'm really fat. I can't wait till I lose weight and I can date hot women. Well, it's not quite that simple, because if you are confident, even as a big guy or a big gal, you're going to be able to go further than you realize with the opposite or even the same sex, as the case may be. It's your ability to network, to be confident, to exude value. And when you don't, that's not a problem with the fasting. So here's what I'm getting to on this point. You need to be very careful of why you are losing weight. If you are losing weight because you don't feel pretty enough or thin enough, that's really not a very good reason. I mean, it's one reason, but it's not a very good reason to lose your weight, because you can't. You got to do it for you. You've got to do it because you know it makes you better all round. Let me say that again. You've got to do it because you know it makes you better all round. If you're doing it because you feel like you have to be good enough for someone, that's a recipe for disaster. Number 5, you become more conscientious of how you are more ambitious, more driven, and possibly more imbalanced. Now let's look at this for a minute. Notice I said imbalanced. My post-fasting Joe is far different from the unmotivated, lethargic, and largely lazy pre-weight loss Joe. That Joe is content to do nothing except the bare minimum. That Joe is content to go through life and just live for himself, barring a few circumstances. He wasn't going anywhere. He wasn't doing anything. And as a result, he was always playing it safe. He was not playing it risky. The universe, success in the universe, is determined by your ability to balance safety versus risk. If you will not take any risks, you will get nowhere. If you never ask anyone out on a date, you will get nowhere. If you never apply for a job that you really want, even though there's a lot of competition in people applying for it, you're never going to get the job you want. You're never going to risk embarrassing yourself, then fine. You're not going to risk ever learning anything. You're not going to risk being humble, showing yourself as humble so that you can learn and gain something. You get the point here. Safety versus risk are the two big factors of universal progress. But the result of that is that once you become risk driven, and when you become energetic, and when you become motivated, and when you become mentally strong and productive, and when you want to do more tasks, you go to the opposite side of safety. The old Joe was stuck in safety mode. The new Joe is stuck in risk. So the new Joe is very risk driven. I not only want to run, I want to be a good runner. I not only want to bench a lot, I want to be really strong, but I know that I can't specialize in all of those things, and that I really don't need to because it's not profitable for my life. So I have to balance safety and risk, or in this case, practicality, with my tasks. That's the new challenge once you come out of the other side of fasting and a significant weight loss. Any big weight loss, of course, is the main thrust here, because it changes you in so many ways. And one of these is that you become ambitious and idealistic. You want to change the world. You want to start a call. You want to start a support group. You want to do this, do that, do this, do that. You just want to set up a whole bunch of things. And if you aren't careful, you're going to get too many irons in the fire. And you're going to do too much, and you're going to fail at a few things. And of course, that's the next thing. You can't be afraid to fail because you're taking risks. And the more risks you take, the more you fail. But of course, the more you learn. But with this comes the potential to be great. Once you do take risks, take out loans, do something, you have to balance all of that. But that's where your potential comes in to be great. That's when you can open another door. But the sad part of that is you can also become imbalanced. Eating disorders are one possibility. Once you've been fasting, you've got to be careful that you are going about normalizing your routine. Spend more time thinking about less food. Go out of your way to spend time with other endeavors that do not involve weight loss, because you don't want to be consumed with an idealistic vision of yourself that is too far removed from how you add value to others. Let me say that again. You don't want to lose sight of how your best version adds value to others. You want to be your best version. You don't want to get on a new obsession. Just like food was your old obsession, your new one is fasting and starvation, for instance. You don't want that. The idea of fasting is to have a super good tool that you can rely upon to put you back to where you need to be, and to augment your life as necessary. But it should never become a hindrance. Cult members, the people who make the best cult members, are people who are very driven and very wanting of something. Those who don't want anything, they're no good to cults, because they don't have motivational factors. They don't have a driver that kicks you forward and says, I want this. When you want something, you've got to be aware, though, that you can be manipulated by yourself and others. So understand that the new you, the more driven, ambitious you, comes with the potential to be great, but also the potential to fail. Just be aware of it. And number 6, you become more conscientious of how life goes on, with or without you. Life moves on. Everything is not about weight loss. And for those of you who are losing a lot of weight or have lost it, many of you are just about finishing. For those of you contacting me, life goes on, and you need to be prepared for that. I alluded to this a minute ago, but here's the hard truth about it. That high finally wears off. That high of saying, hey, look at the new me, look at these new clothes, you barely recognize me. That was so fun for a while. And then eventually you kind of get ready not to think about it. You're ready to move on. The sooner you can do that, the better. The sooner you can cut loose and realize, okay, I've done what I need to do, now it's time to tackle other things in life, the sooner you start opening new doors. You already have the tools to be successful. Now it's just a matter of putting them to use. Beware of extremes. Beware of over self-consciousness. Be aware of Obsession, and be aware of ego most of all. That's what's going to destroy you. You do not want to be consumed with body image. You do not want to be consumed with so many things that derail people from a productive life into an unproductive life.